All right, we're going to talk about beauty next. We've got Kory Marchisotto, and she's the CMO of e.l.f. Cosmetics, and she's called the rocket ship by her people. And although she feels like she's been at e.l.f. for since the beginning, the 17 years of since e.l.f. has been founded, she actually came from big corporate luxury. We're super lucky to have you here, Kory. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Hey, Gary, I've got a request for you for the next 15 minutes.
The request is already granted, Kory.
Can I ask you to replace your F-bombs with e.l.f. bombs?
Done.
All right, let's wake the e.l.f. up, Gary. I'm ready.
This is going to be an e.l.f.ing amazing interview. So, Kory, tell everybody a little bit about your career, and then we'll get into some of this stuff, and we'll talk a little e.l.f., and we'll talk a little bit about how you're navigating, what you're seeing, what your pulse is.
Absolutely. So I actually wanted to be in finance, if you can imagine that. I was never a beauty girl. I was a little bit more of a tomboy. And when I parked my education in downtown Manhattan, it was all about being next to large financial institutions. And when I went on the interview process, I found it cold and sterile and stark. And I was like, wow, this is what I've been dreaming about all this time. And I got this phone call from a friend of my dad's, actually, who was working at LVMH at Givenchy. And she gave me a call and she said, hey, I heard you're looking for your first corporate experience. Why don't you come interview with us? And I was like, well, I don't know. I wanted to be in corporate finance. She's like, just come in and see. And I got to the lobby, Gary, and it was just set from minute one. And you had this French girl at the desk with this short, severe haircut. Red lips, and she looked at me when I walked in and said, hold on a second, picked up the phone and said, Parfum Givenchy. And I was like, oh my God, where do I sign? And it all took off from there. And I stayed in beauty the whole time. It's an amazing category to be in. And I think the reason is once you get past this idea that we're selling product and realize that you're actually helping people feel better about themselves,
self-esteem. It's a vehicle for self-esteem,
self-confidence. It's such a purpose-driven industry that I've now been in it for over 20 years and I've never looked back.
I love it. So everybody, Kory, you don't have a personal Twitter, or are you just being secretive? Because we're using @e.l.f. Cosmetics.
We are using @e.l.f. Cosmetics.
You didn't even answer that question. I like the secretive stuff. So Kory, talk to me about e.l.f. because I think I've noticed a lot of people already saying, what is e.l.f., what is e.l.f., what is e.l.f. So I think this is a great platform. Why don't you give everybody a little context on that?
Sure. e.l.f.'s mission is to make the best of beauty accessible to every eye, lip, and face. And a lot of people don't know e.l.f. Cosmetics is eyes, lips, face. So it was one of the key insights I uncovered when I came inside the organization and did a lot of consumer listening and sentiment. I'm like, wow, everybody knows e.l.f., but they don't know what it stands for.
Interesting.
That was actually the impetus for the TikTok campaign to get behind the idea of eyes, lips, face and create that music track. Yep. So e.l.f. was started on the impossible. And I think, Gary, as a serial entrepreneur, you would appreciate our founders. They started with an impossible mission. They had no background in beauty. They didn't know anything about it. They just saw a white space. And that white space was, how do I create prestige quality products and sell them for $1 over the internet? And that was 16 years ago. So these guys were renegade, groundbreaking, disruptive spirits. We call e.l.f. the OG digital disruptor. I think this brand really, is at the crossroads of beauty and technology. And what I wanted to do when I came in was get back to those digital roots, get back to that renegade spirit, get back to this idea of making the impossible possible. I
love that. And so, and what was going through your mind prior to coming to e.l.f. from like where you were in your career? Did you need e.l.f. as much as they needed you? Was it one of those kind of things?
I think so. I mean, when I met the CEO, you should actually meet him. His CEO title should really be Chief Entrepreneurial Officer. He's also a serial entrepreneur. He grew up with a family that was running a hotel business. He's obsessed with the entrepreneurial spirit and drive. And when I met him and realized that there was something else other than this corporate, hierarchy, tower, bureaucracy playing chess with a renegade spirit and a bias for action, I was like, oh, where do I sign? And quite honestly, Gary, I've never been at a place that moves at this speed. When I was on the interview process, which was quite a journey, actually, everybody kept saying e.l.f. speed, e.l.f. speed, e.l.f. speed. And after every interview, I would look back at my notes and say, what's coming up over and over and over? And it was this thing, e.l.f. speed, e.l.f. speed. I'm like, is this a real thing? And then I got in the company, and I think the most amazing thing was that I realized if I said something, it would happen. And I was like, whoa, that is really powerful. Maybe I should think a little bit more before I say it. And that's the beauty of e.l.f. We're nimble, we're agile, we have an evolve or die mentality. We're not afraid. You know, when everybody's still thinking about TikTok, we've already been there 3 times over. So
talk to me about something that really impressed me. I was, you know, much to my team's chagrin, I don't really prepare for these. I'm just kind of doing what I do, but I did catch, correct me if I'm wrong, because now I might, back to not preparing, I might be wrong here, but I think you, like me, are very close to the customer and do a lot of consumer comment reading. Is that okay? Good. I'm glad to see your body language. Talk to me about that, because I genuinely believe that, you know, for all my talking, it is my listening that has put me in a position to succeed professionally. Why is that important to you? Do you agree? How do you think about it? Blah, blah, blah.
So one of the things that I recognized about e.l.f. really early on is this is a brand of the people, by the people, for the people. And if you are going to make this stake in the ground and say e.l.f. is for every eye, lip, and face, that's a big statement. And the thing that I told my team immediately was that means you're in bed with the consumer. Get in their room, get in their house, get in their medicine cabinet, understand what other brands they shop, understand everything about them. And the other key component, Gary, was not having a vision of who e.l.f. was that we created in a conference room.
Right.
Understanding who
I mean,
e.l.f.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Kory. I apologize, but you just really got me going. Like, you know, it's so e.l.f.ing frustrating for me that when people, like, I've watched everybody talk about being consumer centric, and literally I believe that 87% of the people I interact with, clients, non-clients, pitches, are the antithesis of that. It is complete PowerPoint reporting, ivory tower, complete lack of pulse, 6 years ago consumer shit. Like, do you agree?
100%. Everybody says it. It's like everything that I've realized at e.l.f. Like out there in the corporate world, they say it, they don't do it. And they say it 95% of the time. It's 95% talking, 5% acting. At e.l.f., we are 100% acting. And
Amazing.
We're just on this constant thread of start with a consumer insight. Our entire e.l.f.ing Amazing campaign, which we launched last June, we called it a brand recharge, was all built on the back of consumer insights. We found patterns, threads. What is it that they love about our brand? What is it that excites them about our brand? And created an entire campaign off of those threads and patterns.
How does that, like, if you're actually this close to the consumer, you must be throwing some of the people within your own team a little bit for, like, my team doesn't like me in meetings because they know that I'm going to say things that are like, you know, I'm like, that's not what they think. That's not what they, like, there's a little bit uncomfortableness with how close I actually am to the consumer that I see for my strategy, creative, and account team in a loving way. We've got a great culture, but like, I can feel it sometimes that like people don't want me in a meeting because they know that I'm going to talk about the right this second, and the level of being up to right this second takes so much work. Has that caused any friction? I mean, if you're reading that many comments, you know, you've got insights that unless your team is doing the same, they're not going to have.
I love that you just said that. And I'll tell you the moment in which my team likes me the least. And that's when they get my weekend texts. So I've become the master of taking the screenshot, circling it, you know, with the yellow line, and sending these little things off like, hey, did you guys see this? And how are we reacting? And tomorrow we're going to put up what it is they're asking for. And so
I'm like, Kory, leave me the e.l.f. alone. I'm trying to have a snow cone with my girlfriend.
So I would say that's when they like me the least. And at the same time, I think everybody in the organization appreciates that I put the consumer at the center of the table.
So let's talk about the consumer at the center. I apologize because you're giving me some good stuff here. What platforms are exciting you? Where do you see some arbitrage? Where do you see the consumer at the center being interesting?
I mean, you know what's going to come out of my mouth. TikTok is by far the most exciting platform that there is, has been for over a year, and will continue to be on the road ahead. The work that we've done together with them, the way in which we've been able to propel our brand forward and into an entire new sphere is just truly exceptional. And I'm going to give you a little insight that came from my 16-year-old cohort. I have twin nephews, and they've got a lot of great friends, and I see them as my little mini focus group. So I was sitting around the pool with them. It was probably about a year ago, last summer. And I said, like I always do, talk to me about your social media habits. Snapchat always comes up first. I got to give Snap credit, #1 on the Gen Z list. The next thing was Instagram got muscled out by TikTok. And I was like, tell me about that. And my nephew's girlfriend, she's 16. She's like Princess Buttercup, sweetest, kindest, amazing girl. I adore her. She looked at me and she said, Aunt Kory, Instagram is the place you go to feel bad about yourself. And TikTok is the place that you go to be who you really are.
Yep.
And I was like, the 16-year-old has figured it out, right? And as a brand that is anchored.
Unfortunately, the history of social media will tell you for now, because that Buttercup's younger daughter at 8 is going to talk to her aunt in 8 years and say, Aunt Kory, TikTok is the place where you go to feel bad about yourself. And Shmooga Booga is the place where you go to be yourself or feel happy. It's just the evolution of these platforms.
Totally.
I mean, Facebook is literally, think about this for all of us. I see Linda Boff in the room, who, you know, was one of our earliest clients, and Facebook was such a big part of our conversation in 2009, and she's coming up next. Like, Facebook, when Linda and I met, was this thing that you had to still debate if it was even worth it. Now it is literally 50 to 90-year-olds. 50 to 90. Like, when I always get on my high horse on television, I'm like, you want TV audience? Go to Facebook. It's 50 to 90 and it's cheap. And they consume it because they're arguing or sharing or doing all sorts of things there. That was, and so is what I like about where you're going is, as soon as you saw that, you kind of went and ran, huh?
Went and ran. And, you know, it's not by accident, right? So you hear things, you understand these things as a marketer, and then you look at the audience alignment. Our brand over-indexes with Gen Z. So if you want to continue to propel your business forward, you've got to go where they are. You know, stop pretending. Go where your audience is. And then when you get there, serve them up what matters to them in a way that's relevant to them. I think a lot of companies make these big mistakes. They say, oh, I'm amazing on Instagram. I'm just going to take my asset and repurpose it. That is dead on arrival. So when we decided to go all in on TikTok, we decided to go in a way that nobody had ever gone in before. We said, okay, they're all about self-expression through music and dance. We're all about self-expression through beauty and confidence. How do we marry these two things and do something that's never been done before on the platform? And that's where we had this idea to create an original piece of music that was in the lyrics, eyes, lips, face. And it became an absolute viral sensation.
That's absolutely right. I mean, it's so funny. I have a lot of my hands in music, and we've already now done 7 original songs and beats for brands on the platform. And I'm saying to myself, people are not thinking about music strategy at all. And almost every brand is going to have to get real serious, because the foundational framework of TikTok is so ingrained into music and sound. You know, it's really funny. So many let's call it what it is. So many good looking people, AKA influencers that I know, both men and women, are struggling on TikTok because Instagram was built on imagery, and just being attractive was enough for you to win. Here, if you don't have a true music strategy undertone, you know, at least in the short term, you know, next couple of years, unless they innovate the product aggressively, it's going to be a shortcoming for your upside and success. It's respecting the context of the room.
100%. You know, there's another thing too, Gary, which is lean into what works. So when we went out on TikTok and we realized within 3 days that we had become the most viral success ever, we asked ourselves, rather than stopping and clapping and applauding ourselves,
let's keep going.
And said, what's next?
Yeah, of course.
Where do we go? How do we take this further? How do we lean in? And we decided to do what no beauty brand has ever done before, which is lean into the music, give it a life of its own. We turned a 15-second clip created for TikTok into a 2-minute full-blown song, partnered with a record label, put the song out on Spotify, and it became a global viral sensation almost overnight. So it's the thinking that matters, the sort of infinite mindset to say, so what that we're a music company? Why the e.l.f. not, Gary? Why the e.l.f. not?
Kory, Nintendo started as a playing card company. Like Sony wasn't known for video games. Companies can do anything they want if they can execute. I'm going to sneak in one last thing. The volume of content you're putting out, the right number you feel right now, not enough, too much. Where does your company sit on that?
I think we feel good. It's taken us a while to put those railroad tracks down and get to where we are. I think right now I feel really good about it. We are also facing a moment where I believe we are truly in a quality versus quantity moment, because everybody is so bombarded with content. What matters is, how does my content stand out? How do I make it relevant? How do I make this person want to act, engage, do something?
Do you feel those things are exclusive?
What do you mean?
Like, can you do both?
You can do both. Yeah, I mean, and there's no doubt we're doing quantity. But I think a lot of brands get caught up in like, do I have to post 10 times a day on Instagram?
The problem is, like, I wish brands thought about that, Core. Brands are 10 times a month. Like, I mean, in your world, cosmetics, fashion, they're so fucking precious about every post. They're at one time a year. I mean, show me the brands that are 10 times a day across all their platforms, because I watch all of them and everybody is grossly missing the mark. Kudos to you and your team for hitting that on both fronts. And